The parking garage of Whitmore Industries held a particular kind of silence at 11:30 each night. It was the kind of quiet that Bob Mitchell had grown to cherish during his 3 years working the overnight maintenance shift. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune as he pushed his cart between the concrete pillars, checking for any spills or debris that the day shift might have missed. Bob had learned to read the stories that cars told. The black BMW with the small dent on the driver's side belonged to the accountant who stayed late during tax season. The red Honda with the soccer ball stickers was driven by the marketing manager who coached her son's team on weekends. And the silver Mercedes. That one belonged to Ms. Whitmore, the CEO. For months now, Bob had noticed something troubling. Ms. Whitmore's car had been appearing later and later in the evenings, sometimes not until after midnight. But more concerning were the subtle signs he'd begun to observe. The way she occasionally stumbled slightly when walking to her car, the tremor in her hands when she fumbled with her keys, the pale complexion that seemed to grow more pronounced each week. Bob's late wife, Margaret, had been a nurse for 25 years before cancer took her. During her final months, she had taught him to notice the small things, the way illness whispered before it shouted. "The body tells its story, Bobby," she used to say, "if you know how to listen." Tonight was different. As Bob rounded the corner, near the executive parking spaces, he heard something that made his heart skip. The sound of car keys clattering against concrete. There, beside her Mercedes, Ms. Whitmore had collapsed, her gray business suit wrinkled against the cold garage floor. Bob didn't hesitate. Setting aside his cart, he knelt beside her, his knees creaking with the familiar protest of a man who'd spent years working on his feet. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin felt clammy to the touch. The sweet, fruity scent on her breath confirmed what his careful observations had been suggesting for weeks. "Ms. Whitmore," he said gently, his voice echoing softly in the empty garage. "My name is Bob. I work maintenance here. I'm going to help you." With the practiced efficiency of someone who'd raised a daughter through scraped knees and childhood fevers, Bob checked her pulse and lifted her legs slightly to help circulation. He retrieved the small juice box he always kept in his lunch bag, a habit from Emma's younger days that had simply never left him. As consciousness slowly returned to Catherine's eyes, Bob spoke in the same calm, reassuring tone he'd once used to comfort his daughter after nightmares. "You're going to be okay. Just breathe slowly. That's it." What happened?" Catherine whispered, confusion clouding her features. "Your blood. Sugar dropped," Bob explained quietly. "I've been watching, not to intrude, ma'am, but I've noticed some signs. My wife was diabetic for many years before she passed. The late nights, the trembling hands, the way you sometimes pause before walking. I should have said something sooner." Catherine stared at him with a mixture of embarrassment and growing awareness. I haven't been feeling well for months. The doctor said it was just stress from work." Bob helped her sit up slowly, his movements gentle and unhurried. "Sometimes the body knows things before the mind catches up. My Margaret used to say that illness is just life asking us to pay attention." As they sat together on the cold concrete floor of the parking garage, something extraordinary happened. The barriers between CEO and janitor, between boardroom and basement, simply dissolved. Here were two people who had both known loss, who understood that life's most important lessons often came wrapped in the quiet moments between heartbeats. "I haven't slowed down I can't remember how long," Catherine admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "After my divorce 3 years ago, work became everything. I thought if I just pushed harder, achieved more." Bob nodded with the understanding of someone who had walked a similar path. "After Margaret died, I threw myself into 2 jobs and raising Emma. Thought staying busy would keep the loneliness away. But bodies, they have their own wisdom. They make us stop when our hearts forget how to rest." They talked as Catherine's strength gradually returned. Bob learned that beneath the sharp suits and demanding schedules lived a woman who missed gardening, who used to paint watercolors on Sunday mornings, who had once dreamed of teaching children instead of managing corporations. Catherine discovered that the quiet janitor who had saved her life was also a man who read poetry to his teenage daughter, who had put himself through night school to become a certified building engineer, who volunteered at the community center, teaching woodworking to at-risk youth. "Why did you notice?" Catherine asked finally. "Others see me every day, but you saw what they didn't." Bob was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "I suppose when you've loved someone, through illness you learn to see past the surface. My Emma used to ask me why I paid attention to such small things. The way people walked, how they held their shoulders, the tiredness in their eyes. I told her that everyone carries something, and sometimes the kindest thing we can do is simply notice." 3 months later, Catherine Whitmore would be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. The early detection, thanks to Bob's quiet observation, would allow for immediate lifestyle changes and treatment that prevented serious complications. But more than that, the encounter in the parking garage would plant seeds of change that would grow in ways neither of them could have imagined that night. Catherine would establish the Whitmore Wellness Initiative, providing comprehensive health screenings for all employees. She would also create the Quiet Heroes program, recognizing staff members who showed exceptional care and attention to their colleagues' well-being. Bob would be the first recipient, though he would ask that the recognition be shared with the entire maintenance team. The garage still holds its 11:30 silence, but now it carries something different. The memory of a moment when two lives intersected in exactly the way they needed to, when quiet observation became gentle intervention, when the act of truly seeing another person created ripples of kindness that would spread far beyond that concrete floor. Sometimes the most profound gifts come not from grand gestures, but from the simple decision to pay attention, to notice when someone needs help, and to offer it with the gentle dignity that recognizes our shared humanity. As Bob would later tell his daughter Emma, "Life has a way of putting us exactly where we need to be, exactly when we need to be there. The trick is staying awake enough to recognize those moments when they come,